Hello, I'm Jim Demon with Clark County Close-Up. Thank you so much for meeting with us, Amy.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate your time.
So, what is the role of the Children's Justice Center?
The Children's Justice Center, or CJC, is a multidisciplinary team that seeks the truth, protects the rights of victims, and investigates and prosecutes felony level child abuse while working to minimize trauma to child victims and their families.
Who operates the Children's Justice Center?
CJC is a fully co-located and collaborative government-based organization that serves children and families in Clark County. We opened our doors in February of 1990 as a multidisciplinary child abuse unit, and it includes personnel from the City of Vancouver Police Department, the Clark County Sheriff's Office, and the Clark County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. We also have victim advocates, specially trained forensic interviewers, mental health providers, child protective service workers from the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, and members of the community that help support children.
And,
The,
and oh, so how many staff members do you have?
we actually are a team member, and so we don't think of ourselves as individual staff members, but we have a team of about 27 folks that work at CJC to work to protect children and families.
Okay, what's the annual budget?
Our annual budget is about $1.4 million, and the majority of that funding comes from both the city and the county, but we do rely very heavily on grant writing, on fundraising, and on donations.
So, what do you consider is child abuse?
Child abuse can be any act or failure to act on the part of a parent or caregiver that results in death, serious physical or emotional harm, or sexual abuse or exploitation. And it could be a failure to prevent imminent risk of serious injury to a child.
Okay. April is the Child Abuse Prevention Month. How large is a problem is child abuse in our community?
How big is the problem? Unfortunately, child abuse and neglect are all too often, are all too common. At least 1 in 7 children have experienced child abuse and or neglect in the past year, and this is likely an underestimate. The long-term effects of child abuse are well known. When we think about studies on adverse childhood experiences, we know that children who experience trauma that goes untreated are more likely to have long-term medical, emotional, and social problems, and they're more likely to end up arrested as juveniles or adults, and are more likely to commit violent crimes and end up in prison and have psychological disorders when we don't interact or intervene appropriately.
Are the numbers of reports increasing or decreasing?
Well, up until the pandemic, the national trend demonstrated that there was a slow decline in child abuse and neglect.
Okay. So, what impacts has the pandemic had on child abuse in our community?
Well, COVID-19 has impacted children and families in a number of different ways. When we had those increases on challenges with housing, job and food insecurities, and those physical health challenges, those increase stressors for families. And when we see poverty increase, when we see family stressors increase, that tends to lead to child maltreatment. And so when we were in lockdown, we had children and families who were forced to be together under very stressful situations. And what we saw was that child maltreatment and other forms of family violence, including domestic violence occurring in front of children, actually increased. There was a decline in reports initially, but we've actually seen since March of 2020 is that these increases have been exponential. So we are actually seeing about 40% more cases of child maltreatment than we were pre-pandemic, and those abuses are more severe. So we're seeing more deaths, we're seeing more serious injuries and hospitalizations, and we're seeing increases, significant increases in online crimes against children. Because children are spending so much time online, learning and entertaining themselves, they are also at much higher risk for being exploited by offenders online.
Are offenders more typically strangers or family friends?
The vast majority of individuals who are abusing children are people that the children know. So parents, caretakers, family members, of friends of family members, they're the folks who have the access to the children. When people talk about stranger danger, that's really creating more of a problem for us because that's not who's abusing our kids most of the time. When we look at the statistics of people who are abusing children, about 90% of the time it's parents or caretakers and other family members, and about 1 to 4% of the time it's strangers. So that's really not where the danger is coming from.
So, what are some risk factors that should be considered when with child abuse?
Well, there are a number of different risk factors for folks, and it doesn't mean that if people have these risk factors that their kids will be abused, but it does increase the risk. So a parent who has their own history of being abused or neglected, if they have untreated mental health issues, in those circumstances where there's increased family stress, which is what we saw with the pandemic, a child who is developmentally or cognitively delayed is at more risk of being abused. Social or extended family isolation, that's another factor that we saw with the pandemic because families were isolated from the other support systems that were available. And just people who have poor understanding of child development and where children should be developmentally, that sometimes becomes a stressor for parents, and that may lead to abuse as well.
Okay. Let's go through a typical case of suspected abuse. How does the center find out about most cases?
All of the cases that come to CJC are referred to us either by the Department of Children, Youth, and Families or by law enforcement agencies. And then we've got a couple of folks who will screen through all of those reports and make a determination whether they fit within the criteria for CJC. If it's a felony level or a suspected felony level child abuse case, then our team will conduct the investigations of those cases. We have specially trained forensic interviewers who will talk to those kids to get them to tell as much as they can about what their experiences are. Our team members, our law enforcement partners will conduct those investigations. All along the way, our victim advocates will help support the children and families through this process. And then if warranted, the case will be referred on for prosecution. So we have this full scale, holistic, multidisciplinary team response. And then we're also working with our community partners to refer out for medical services from the child abuse assessment team with Legacy Salmon Creek and with our mental health partners. So we're making sure that the children and families are getting the treatment that they need to help work with them and resolve the trauma.
How can we help stop abuse from occurring?
Well, we want to make sure that as parents, we're nurturing parents, we're supporting kids and allowing them to have the safety to grow and become independent adults. We also want to reach out to friends and families and neighbors, especially during this very stressful time. Just being a support person for other people can help reduce some of the stress and help protect children. Take care of yourselves. Make sure that you, as a parent, are taking care of your own stress. You're getting your own time to decompress and take care of your own physical or mental health issues that you may have. Become involved in programs that provide supports for children and families. There are a lot of programs within our community that help support children and families. There are CASA programs, court appointed special advocates. There are office moms and dads, but there are a number of different programs in our communities that can help support children and families. Get involved with other youth serving organizations. And if you're involved, make sure they have appropriate protections in place, that there are safety guidelines that are there for children and families to help protect kids from being maltreated. And then monitor your child's television, video, and internet using. Kids should not be online alone in their bedrooms. They should be online where other people can see what's going on around them. Volunteer your time, volunteer any money that you can have. And please, 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 if you ever suspect that a child is being abused, please make that report to the authorities.
Okay. So again, so if you do suspect, call the authorities.
Yes.
Okay. Uh, Now, people in some occupations are state mandated reporters of abuse or neglect. But again, what if you're a neighbor, you see something, friends still do the same thing? How should you respond?
Absolutely. There are mandated reporters, but that's not just, we're not just limiting suspected abuse, reporting suspected abuse to those mandated reporters. If anyone thinks that there's abuse going on for a child or family, make that call. And if you call it's the End Harm line. So it's 866 363 4276. That's the statewide End Harm line. Give them a call and let them know what you're seeing. What are the facts that lead you to believe that the child is maybe being harmed? And you don't need to have any evidence. That's up to the professionals. So anytime you have kind of that gut feeling of something's just not right here, think about all of those factors that are making you think that, make that call and let the professionals then do their work. And there are protections if you are a voluntary reporter and you make a report in good faith, then you're immune from any liability legally from anyone else.
Okay. Now, can people donate to the Children's Justice Center?
Absolutely, yes. Financial donations are always welcome. We also welcome games, toys, non-plush toys, clothing. Those are all things that we can typically help children and families with. Journals, we have a need for items for older children in particular, or teens in particular. So journals, books, other things that can engage them and entertain them using their minds as opposed to maybe video games or other things. Those are all the types of items that we would welcome.
If people want more information or want to donate, where can they check?
They can give us a call, and our number is 564-397-6002. We also have a foundation with the Southwest Washington Community Foundation. There's a fund for CJC, and people can donate there as well.
Well, thank you so much for the work that you do for the community and protecting children, and we appreciate it so much. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.